The map on your wall is a lie. You look at it and you see a solid, continuous block of colour, whether it is the United States or the European Union. You see lines that were drawn 100 years ago, and you assume they represent stability. But the ground beneath those lines has already shifted. We are not talking about a sudden, Hollywood-style civil war with tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue or the Champs-Élysées tomorrow morning. That is the movie version, and frankly, it is the easy version to prepare for. No, the reality is slower, uglier, and much harder to survive. It is called Balkanization. It is the process where a unified state splinters into hostile, smaller regions, not with a bang, but with 1,000 bureaucratic cuts, resource feuds, and localized checkpoints. It is happening right now. The power grid in Texas, the water rights in the Colorado Basin, the migrant quotas in Hungary versus the policies in Brussels. These are not political debates. These are the fault lines of the new map. And if you are still planning for a unified national recovery, you are preparing for a world that no longer exists. Today, we are gaming out the fracture. We are going to walk through what happens when the united part of the name becomes just a suggestion. We are going to look at the 4 stages of balkanization, from the economic soft split to the hard militarized border. Most people think preparedness is about hoarding beans for a total collapse. But in a fractured scenario, the grocery store might still be open, but your credit card gets declined because your bank is in a hostile state jurisdiction. The police might still answer the phone, but they might be enforcing local militia law rather than federal statute. This is a survival curriculum for the grey zone, where the danger is not anarchy, but weaponized bureaucracy and regional tribalism. You need to understand how to move, trade, and exist when your country becomes 5 different countries that all hate each other. If you want to survive the breakup, you need to secure your spot in this briefing right now, because the borders are moving faster than you think. Imagine it is a Tuesday 3 years from now. You are at a gas station just across the state line, maybe in rural Oregon, or perhaps near the German-Polish border. You slide your card. Declined. You try again. Declined. The attendant behind the glass does not even look up from his phone. He just points to a taped-up sign on the window. No coastal banks. Local scrip or cash only. You check your phone to transfer funds, but the app is geo-locked. Your assets are theoretically safe in a New York or Frankfurt server, but out here, in this breakaway zone, that digital ledger is meaningless. The stunning realization hits you not as a panic, but as a dull, bureaucratic headache. You have money, but you are poor. The guy at the pump next to you is paying with a stack of local vouchers that look like they were printed at a library. A truck rumbles past, flying a flag that combines the state seal with a militia logo. You aren't in a war zone, there are no explosions, but you have just crossed an invisible economic border, and you are effectively a foreign national in your own country, without a passport or valid currency. The fuel pump clicks off. You are stranded, not by physics, but by politics. The average person reacts to this soft economic secession with denial. They stand there arguing with the gas station attendant, threatening to call the corporate office or the Better Business Bureau. They treat it like a customer service failure. They think, this is illegal, the dollar is legal tender, they have to take it. They waste precious hours trying to interface with a system that has intentionally disconnected itself. While they are yelling at a minimum wage worker about federal banking laws, the locals are buying up the last of the jerry cans and propane. The failed prepper is the guy with $100,000 in a 401k and a platinum credit card who starves to death in a motel room because he didn't realise that in a balkanized economy, purchasing power is geographical. They wait for the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank to fix the glitch. They do not realise that the glitch is the new policy. By the time they accept that their electronic wealth is frozen, the window to barter for safe passage has closed. To survive the economic fracture, you have to diversify your liquidity outside the primary banking system. We aren't just talking about gold and silver, though those have their place. We are talking about fungibility across jurisdictional lines. In a Balkanized scenario, regional scrip or IOUs often emerge. You need tangible assets that are universally valued, regardless of whose face is on the money. Small denomination silver rounds are good, but consumable trade goods are better. High-quality alcohol, antibiotics, and ammunition are the universal currency of fractured states. But more importantly, you need to maintain banking redundancy. If you live in a blue region but have a getaway property in a red region, or vice versa, you need local banking relationships in both. Do not keep all your cash in a national chain that might be sanctioned or nationalized by a rogue regional government. Keep physical cash on hand, but understand its volatility. In a fracture scenario, the federal dollar might trade at a 40% discount in a rebellious province. You need to be ready to operate in a barter-first economy where the price of a tank of gas is determined not by the market, but by what you have in your trunk that the attendant actually wants. Here is the twist that ruins the basic barter strategy: capital controls and civil asset forfeiture. In a fragmenting union, regional governments become desperate for hard currency. They will set up checkpoints, not just for weapons, but for wealth. If you try to flee a collapsing city with 50 gold coins and 10,000 in cash, and you hit a safety checkpoint run by the state guard, they will confiscate it. They will call it a war tax or Emergency Preservation Act. The complication here is that moving wealth becomes as dangerous as moving narcotics. You cannot just pile gold into the SUV and drive. You need to learn the art of poverty camouflage. You need to look like you have nothing worth taking. Your vehicle should look beat up. Your clothes should look worn. You need to hide your trade goods in the frame of the car, not in a shiny Pelican case in the back seat. And you need digital assets that are non-custodial, crypto keys that you can memorize or hide in a text file disguised as a family recipe, so you can cross the line with your wealth in your head, not in your hands. Fast forward 6 months. The economic split has hardened. Now comes the resource war. You are in a major city in the southwest, or perhaps southern Europe. It is mid-July, 110 degrees. The air conditioning hums, then shudders and dies. The lights go out. But this isn't a storm. You look out the window and the skyline is dark, but on the horizon, across the river or the mountain range, the neighbouring state is glowing with light. They haven't lost power. They cut your power. The Regional Water Authority upstream has decided that local agriculture takes priority over your city's hydration. You turn on the tap and get a brown sputter of mud. The news, if you can get a signal, is calling it a temporary reallocation of strategic resources. But you know what it is. It is a siege. The neighbouring region is weaponizing the grid. Within 4 hours, your high-rise apartment turns into a solar oven. The elevators are coffins. The streets fill with people who realise that their city produces nothing, owns nothing, and controls nothing. You are watching the death of the unified infrastructure, and you are on the wrong side of the valve. The masses die in this phase because they wait for the federal cavalry. They sit in their overheating apartments, assuming that it is illegal to cut off water and power to millions of people. They believe the central government will force the upstream state to open the dams or reconnect the grid. They don't understand that the central government has lost the monopoly on force. The upstream state has its own national guard at the switching stations. The failed reaction is political outrage instead of physical adaptation. People waste their dying phone batteries tweeting at politicians instead of filling bathtubs. They organise protests in the town square, which just makes them dehydrated targets for crowd control. They act like citizens with rights rather than refugees in a resource war. They assume the water will come back on because it has to. It doesn't have to. In a balkanized world, resources flow to where the power is, not where the need is. If your region has nothing to trade, no oil, no food, no manufacturing, you are simply a liability to the breakaway state next door. Survival in the resource freeze requires grid autonomy. This is different from standard blackout prep because the duration is indefinite. You are not waiting for a line crew, you are waiting for a treaty. You need a water strategy that assumes the municipal pipes are dead forever. Do you have a way to harvest rain? Do you have a map of local natural springs that aren't controlled by the city? For power, a gas generator is a liability. Fuel will be the first thing embargoed by the rival faction. You need solar, but not a massive roof array that screams, "Loot me." You need portable, foldable panels and a battery bank that you can hide. You need to understand the resource geography of your specific region. If you live in a desert city that imports 90% of its water and power, you need to leave before the split happens. If you are staying, you need to build a micro-infrastructure inside your home. Sanitation becomes the killer here. When the water stops, the sewage stops. You need a bucket system, lime, and a plan for waste disposal that doesn't involve tossing it in the street, because disease will sweep through these fractured cities faster than any militia. The complication in a resource war is infrastructure nationalisation. When the crisis hits, the local authorities in your region will try to seize any private resilience assets to maintain order. If you have the only working well in the neighbourhood, the local sheriff, who is now acting as a warlord for the regional governor, will seize it for the public good. If you have a visible stockpile of fuel, it will be requisitioned. The threat isn't just the lack of resources, it is the predation by the desperate remnants of the state. You cannot flaunt your preparation. Your lights should be blacked out even if you have power. Your water collection should be concealed. You need to practice poverty discipline. Look as thirsty and dirty as everyone else when you go outside. If you look clean-shaven and well-fed in a city that has been without water for 3 weeks, you are painting a target on your back. The neighbours will rat you out to the patrols just for a bottle of water. In a balkanized siege, envy is the primary intelligence network for the authorities. Let's deepen the fracture. The maps haven't officially changed, but the laws have. You are driving your family to a safer location, maybe from a blue state to a red one, or crossing from France into Italy. You are pulled over by a patrol. It's not the regular police, it's a state defense force unit. They ask for ID. You hand them your driver's license. The officer looks at it, sneers, and says, "We don't recognize permits from that jurisdiction anymore." He asks to search the vehicle. You hesitate, citing the Fourth Amendment, or EU freedom of movement. He laughs. He pulls you out of the car. In your trunk, you have a firearm that is perfectly legal in your home state, or perhaps a stash of medications that are restricted here. Suddenly, you aren't a traveler, you are a smuggler. You are arrested, your vehicle is seized, and your family is left on the side of the highway. You haven't broken any federal laws, but federal law has evaporated. You have fallen into the jurisdiction trap, where what is a constitutional right in one county is a felony in the next. The jail you are thrown into isn't run by the DOJ. It's run by a local magistrate who answers to no one but the regional party boss. The mistake here is relying on reciprocity. People assume that because they are citizens of the larger union, they have rights everywhere. They think, "I have a permit for this," or "My prescription is valid." They attempt to litigate their way out of a confrontation with men holding rifles. They do not understand that in a balkanizing state, the law is used as a filter to keep undesirables out. The patrol officer isn't enforcing the law, he is enforcing demographics. He is looking for a reason to confiscate your assets or turn you back. The failed reaction is arrogance, the belief that your status as a citizen protects you. It doesn't. In these zones, you are only protected by your tribe, and if you are in the wrong territory, you have no tribe. The people who get crushed in the jurisdiction trap are the ones who insist on their rights rather than assessing the power dynamic. They are the ones who get disappeared into a county holding cell because they talked back to a deputy who decides they look like an enemy combatant. Navigating the jurisdiction trap requires paperwork camouflage. You need to sanitize your vehicle and your person before you cross any regional line. Do not have bumper stickers, flags, or political symbols that identify your origin or ideology. You need to be a grey man politically. If you're traveling with firearms or sensitive gear, they must be hidden in deep concealment, not in the glove box. But more importantly, you need local legitimacy. If you are moving to a new region, you need to have paperwork that suggests you belong there, or are just passing through to somewhere else. Fake itineraries, work orders, or invitation letters from local churches can help. You need to know the specific trigger laws of the region you are entering. Is there a curfew? Is there a ban on certain types of fuel containers? Is wearing camouflage clothing illegal? You have to research the route like you are entering a foreign country. And you need a bribe budget. Not a wad of cash you wave around, but a separate wallet with a few $100s or a pack of cigarettes that can be donated to the Benevolent Patrolmen's Association on the spot. This isn't corruption, it's the toll for passage in a fractured state. The terrifying complication here is digital blacklisting. In a modern balkanization, the checkpoint isn't just a guy looking at your license. It's an automatic license plate reader, or ALPR, linked to a partisan database. One region might designate anyone who donated to a specific political cause or worked for a specific NGO as a security risk. As you drive past a camera 2 miles before the checkpoint, your plate is flagged. By the time you stop, they already know who you are, how you voted, and what you posted on social media 5 years ago. This is the weaponization of big data for sectarian purging. To survive this, you might need to abandon your primary vehicle. You might need to buy a clean car for cash locally, one that isn't tied to your digital footprint. Or you have to travel specifically on backroads that avoid the ALPR net. You need to scrub your phone, delete the apps, clear the history, or better yet, carry a burner phone and leave your smart device in a Faraday bag or destroyed. If they scan your phone and find the wrong news app, you are done. Now we reach the ugliest phase. The political rhetoric has turned into physical removal. You are in your suburban home. You've lived there for 10 years. You pay your taxes, you mow your lawn. But the neighborhood is changing. New flags are flying from the porches. Flags of the regional movement. One night, a truck stops in front of the house 3 doors down. The house of the family that goes to the wrong church or votes the wrong way. Men get out. There is shouting, glass breaking, and then the family is dragged out and put into the truck. Their house is spray painted with the word traitor or outsider. You watch from behind your curtains, heart hammering against your ribs. The police do not come. The police are likely the ones driving the truck, or at least escorting it. This is the Sectarian Purge. It isn't a battlefield, it's a neighborhood cleansing. It starts with intimidation, then vandalism, then eviction at gunpoint. You realize that your neutrality is no longer a shield. If you do not display the loyalty markers of the dominant faction, you are next on the list. The community you thought you were part of has dissolved into us and them. And you are holding your breath, praying you look enough like us to survive the night. The fatal error in the purge phase is normalization bias combined with stubbornness. People say, "This is my home. I have a deed. I'm not leaving." They think that because they are good neighbours, they will be spared. They bake cookies for the militia guys. They try to keep their heads down. But in a Balkanized conflict, the goal of the dominant faction is homogeneity. They want total control of the territory. The failed reaction is staying too long in a hostile demography. If you are a cultural, political, or ethnic minority in a region that is radicalizing, you cannot wait until the trucks show up. History tells us, from Sarajevo to Baghdad, that when the neighbours start marking houses, the time to leave was yesterday. The people who die are the ones who think they can reason with a mob that has been fed a steady diet of propaganda saying that you are the cause of their hunger and misery. They wait for the fever to break, but the fever only breaks after the purge is complete. Surviving a purge requires aggressive relocation or total assimilation. If you can leave, you must map your escape corridors now. Major highways will be choked or controlled. You need to know the rural routes, the logging roads, the tracks that cross the state lines where the patrols are thin. You need a go bag that isn't just camping gear, but contains your identity papers, deeds, and hard assets. If you cannot leave, you must assimilate. This is distasteful, but necessary. You put up the flag. You go to the meetings. You memorize the shibboleths of the new regime. You act enthusiastic. This is social camouflage. It is psychologically damaging, but it keeps the spray paint off your door. You also need to harden your home, not to fight a siege, you will lose a siege against a militia, but to deter the opportunists. Motion lights, reinforced doors, and a reputation for being armed but quiet. However, the most critical logistic is intel. You need to be listening to the local AM radio, the encrypted telegram channels of the local groups. You need to know when the rhetoric shifts from "we hate them" to "we need to remove them." That shift is your final warning signal. The complication is the informant trap. In a high-trust society, you can vent to your friends. In a purging society, your children, your neighbours, or your co-workers might turn you in to gain status with the new regime. You cannot trust anyone outside your immediate circle of absolute loyalty. A casual comment about the foolishness of the new regional governor can get you flagged. The complication is that the threat is inside the wire. Your own operational security must be absolute. You cannot plan your escape on a shared computer. You cannot discuss your hidden food stash with your neighbour over the fence. You have to assume that everyone is looking for a way to buy safety, and trading your secrets is the currency they will use. The paranoia this induces is debilitating, but necessary. You have to operate as a sleeper cell in your own life. The moment you trust the wrong person with your true allegiance or your exit plan, the game is over. The final phase is the hard border. The fracture is complete. The highways between states are now blocked by concrete Jersey barriers and machine gun nests. We aren't talking about a checkpoint anymore. We are talking about a DMZ. You need to cross from the free states of the plains into the Pacific Compact to reach a dying relative or access a specific medical treatment. You approach the border zone. It looks like the Berlin Wall. There are drones buzzing overhead. The fields on either side of the highway are mined or sensor tagged. You see a line of refugees, people who used to be your countrymen, waiting in the rain for entry visas that will never be processed. Smugglers hang around the edges, offering to guide you through the woods for $5,000 or a gold bar. The United States or the European Union exists only on old maps. On the ground, you are standing at the edge of a foreign, hostile nation that speaks your language but wants you dead. The realization sets in. There is no going back. The freedom of movement you took for granted is gone. You are trapped in the box you are standing in. The failed reaction at the hard border is panic and desperation. People try to run the border, they try to sneak through the woods at night with flashlights, carrying crying babies. They get picked up by thermal optics in seconds. Or they pay the smugglers, who rob them and leave them in a ditch. The desperation comes from a lack of acceptance that the world has fundamentally changed. They still think, I'm an American, I can go to California. They don't respect the lethality of the new lines. They treat it like a game of hide and seek, not a military exclusion zone. The people who die here are the ones who didn't move during phase 1, 2, or 3. They waited until the concrete dried. Now they are trying to force a door that has been welded shut. They become statistics in the border skirmishes that the new regional news channels will use as propaganda for the next 10 years. Crossing a hard border is a special operations mission. If you must do it, you need to think like a coyote. First, you need the gap. Every border has holes, usually in the rugged, difficult terrain that patrols avoid. The high mountains, the swamps, the deep deserts. You need physical fitness levels that allow you to ruck 20 miles through rough country at night. You need to avoid the roads entirely. Second, you need the cover. You don't cross as a refugee, you cross as commerce. If trade is still flowing, bribing a truck driver to hide you in a cargo container is safer than walking through a minefield. But the best logistic is dual citizenship. Not legally, but functionally. You need papers for both sides. Before the hard freeze, you should have secured an address, a utility bill, or an ID from the other side. If you can walk up to the checkpoint and present a valid resident ID for the destination state, you have a chance. But frankly, the best survival strategy for Phase 5 is simply not to be there. You should have chosen your side back in Phase 2. Now you dig in and survive the peace. The final complication is the drone net. In the 20th century, you could sneak past a guard tower. In the 21st century, the border is watched by AI-driven drone swarms and seismic sensors. You can't just wear dark clothes. You need thermal camouflage, mylar-lined ponchos, wool blankets, moving only during rainstorms or heavy cloud cover when thermal contrast is lower. The complication is that technology has made the physical border almost impermeable to the amateur. If you trip a seismic sensor, a drone is dispatched automatically. It doesn't even need a human pilot. It will drop a tear gas canister or tag you with dye. You are fighting a robot. This is why the run for the hills fantasy fails in a balkanized tech state. Unless you know how to defeat thermal imaging and seismic detection, the hard border is a wall you cannot climb. You are locked in with whatever warlord runs your sector. Balkanization is not the end of the world. It is the end of the united world. History is full of empires that cracked apart. The Romans, the Ottomans, the Soviets. Life went on. People fell in love, raised kids, and grew food in the ruins of the old maps. But the rules changed. The people who survived were the ones who stopped looking at the flag that was falling down and started looking at the ground they were standing on. They built local networks. They secured local resources. They understood that help was not coming from the capital because the capital was burning. You have to shrink your world to the size of your influence, your street, your town, your county. That is where you survive. The grand politics are over for you. Now it is about who controls the water pump and who commands the checkpoint at the end of the road. But there is one final threat we haven't touched. Once the fracture happens, once the states are weak and divided, the vultures begin to circle. Foreign powers do not just watch a superpower break up, they intervene. They fund the militias, they offer peacekeeping troops, they seize the ports. The Balkanization is just the opening act for the invasion. If you want to know what happens when the blue helmets show up in your hometown to restore order, you need to be in the next briefing. That is a scenario that makes the Civil War look like a playground fight. Secure your spot now, because the map is not done changing. You survived the simulation. Now survive the reality. Equip yourself at the official supply depot. Because if the world is going to end, you might as well look prepared.